Millionaire sneaks out to see Mistress at night. Pregnant wife leaves with their child on the spot. Have you ever wondered what secrets lurk behind the walls of a perfect mansion? Meet Andrew Kensington, a charismatic millionaire who appears to have it all: a thriving business empire, a sprawling estate nestled in the prestigious Bel Air neighborhood, and a beautiful wife, Samantha, who's expecting their second child. But beneath the veneer of luxury and marital bliss lies a heart-wrenching betrayal. Night after night, Andrew slips out under the cover of darkness, leaving Samantha distraught and suspicious. And in a single, explosive confrontation, her worst fears come true. Stay tuned to discover the scandalous twists of this gripping family drama. Andrew Kensington was a name that frequently splashed across financial magazines and business news networks. At just 37 years old, he had become the CEO of an expansive real estate and tech conglomerate, Kensington Enterprises. Everyone who met Andrew for the first time found him magnetic, tall, broad-shouldered, with a practiced confidence that made one feel that anything was possible if he was at the helm. Yet for all his public glory, Andrew was at heart a complicated man. He was married to Samantha Kensington, formerly Samantha Wilcox, who had been his college sweetheart. Samantha, 35, was in many ways Andrew's complete opposite. While Andrew possessed that larger-than-life aura, Samantha was gentle and modest, preferring quiet nights with family over posh galas. Their marriage had all the makings of a timeless love story. Two bright students from the University of Southern California, bonding over study sessions, Sunday brunches, and volunteer work at a local animal shelter. Andrew's ambition propelled him through the ranks, eventually bringing him wealth beyond his wildest imaginings. Samantha, meanwhile, chose to pursue a career in early childhood education before becoming a stay-at-home mother after the birth of their daughter, Lily. Their daughter was now 4 years old, a lively child with Andrew's mischievous grin and Samantha's soulful eyes. Lily was the light of the Kensington household, a wide-eyed little girl with curly dark hair who brought sparkles of joy to every corner of the mansion. Samantha loved being a mum, and at 6 months pregnant with her second child, she was thrilled to give Lily a sibling. Everything about Samantha's life seemed golden: a massive home in Bel Air, doting grandparents on both sides, an affectionate sister named Elena Garcia, who visited often, and a circle of friends that grew wider each year. Yet, anyone paying close attention might have noticed subtle cracks forming in the glittery surface of her life. Andrew was often away on business trips, leaving Samantha alone in that sprawling mansion. The staff housekeepers, a nanny, and a driver took care of Samantha's everyday needs, but they could never fill the emotional space Andrew vacated. Samantha grew used to lonely dinners in a dining hall fit for 20. Nights often turned into restless, anxious hours waiting for Andrew's text messages confirming he'd landed safely or that he had a late conference call. One evening, Samantha began feeling twinges of doubt. She recalled the way Andrew used to look at her like she was his entire world. Now, though, something about his eyes had changed. They had grown distant, as though part of him was perpetually elsewhere. Even Lily's excited shrieks of "Daddy's home" did not light the same spark in him. Samantha tried to banish her suspicions. Life could be stressful for a man controlling a multi-billion-dollar empire, she told herself. Stress did that to people. Still, every so often, Samantha would find strange receipts in Andrew's pockets from restaurants they never visited together, or see cryptic text messages flash on his phone. This gnawed at her heart. She once confronted him gently. "Is everything okay at work? You've been tense," she'd say, stroking his shoulder. Andrew always brushed it off as the typical concerns of a busy executive. When Andrew received a phone call one night and, moments later, claimed an emergency meeting had popped up at midnight. Samantha's heart pounded. A midnight meeting in downtown Los Angeles, so urgent he had to leave at once? She felt her stomach churn as she watched him go. The staff pretended not to notice anything amiss, though Samantha was aware of hushed whispers whenever Andrew set off on these nocturnal escapes. She saw the sympathetic, pitiful looks in the maid's eyes. Something wasn't right, and in her gut Samantha could feel a storm brewing. She never imagined, however, just how violent that storm would be, one that would tear apart her illusions of a perfect marriage and launch her into a world of heartbreak, betrayal, and resilience she never thought possible. Samantha woke the next morning with a heavy heart. Sleep had eluded her after Andrew's late-night departure. She tossed and turned, feeling a smouldering ache in her chest, but she told herself she needed proof before making any assumptions. After sending Lily off to preschool, Samantha ventured down to the breakfast room. The staff, too polite to show open concern, maintained their usual deference. Andrew, for his part, was not at the table. He rarely was anymore, especially on nights he worked late. Samantha forced a slice of toast down, her stomach rebelling with morning sickness and anxiety. The pregnancy felt more daunting than ever, physically draining, with her back aching, her feet swelling, and her hormones making her more sensitive to every shift in Andrew's behavior. That day, Samantha decided to visit her sister, Elena Garcia, who lived just a short drive away. Elena was a pragmatic soul, the type who faced problems head-on with unwavering courage. After Samantha's chauffeur dropped her off at Elena's modest but cozy home, she felt her shoulders relax a fraction. Elena's place was a far cry from the Kensington mansion, no grand fountains or acres of manicured lawns, but it had warmth and a sense of genuine comfort. The sisters settled on a cream-colored sofa, with Elena's cat, Biscuit, perched on top of the couch, tail twitching as though he sensed Samantha's tension. "Spill it, Sam," Elena said as she offered her a glass of water. "You look pale." Samantha tried to steady her voice, but the words came tumbling out. She told Elena about Andrew's frequent absences, the midnight phone call, the suspicious receipts. Though she had no concrete proof, every fiber of her being screamed that Andrew was up to something beyond ordinary business concerns. Elena listened, her expression grave. "Have you asked him directly?" she asked, flipping her straight black hair behind her shoulder. Samantha sighed, feeling tears prick at her eyes. "Yes, he always says it's work-related, or that I'm imagining things. And maybe I am. Maybe I'm just hormonal, but something isn't right." Elena tapped her chin thoughtfully. "You're not crazy or paranoid. You're pregnant and sensitive to the shifts in your environment. Andrew's changed, Sam. I've seen it in the way he barely talks at family gatherings. He's always checking his phone. You're telling me you found receipts that don't make sense. You know him best, trust your instincts." Although this conversation lifted some weight off Samantha's heart, just having someone believe her the sense of dread lingered. That very night, Andrew came home close to 2 a.m. with no explanation other than long negotiations with an important international client. He stripped off his tailored suit and fell into bed, not noticing that Samantha was wide awake, tears silently streaming down her cheeks. A few nights later, Samantha's suspicions solidified. She woke in the middle of the night to a dull hum, only to see Andrew slipping out of the bedroom door. The corridor lights were off, and outside, in the silver glow of the moon, she watched from the window as Andrew climbed into the driver's seat of his midnight blue Maserati, speeding off without so much as a backward glance. That brazen departure cut into Samantha's soul like a blade. She didn't even attempt to sleep again, her mind spinning, conjuring up the worst of possibilities. In the morning, she resolved to act. Samantha called a personal contact, James Carter, a private investigator known to Elena through a mutual friend. James had helped Elena once, when she had a former landlord refusing to return her security deposit, and he came highly recommended for discretion and thoroughness. Samantha never thought she'd stoop to hiring a detective to watch her husband, but desperation overrode her pride. When James arrived, Samantha asked for absolute secrecy. She gave him the dates and times Andrew usually left the house, and handed over photographs of Andrew's Maserati and the addresses of all his offices. James, a stocky man with kind eyes, listened carefully and asked questions that made Samantha's pulse accelerate. How often does he leave at night? Are there any particular patterns you've noticed? Does he have a personal assistant who could be covering for him? James inquired, scribbling notes in a small leather-bound notebook. Samantha answered as best she could. When he was satisfied, James promised to begin surveillance immediately. "I understand the sensitivity of this situation," he said, voice steady. "And I promise you whatever is happening, you'll get the truth." That night, Samantha paced the floor of her bedroom, waiting for Andrew to return. To her surprise, he came home at a reasonable hour. He offered no explanations, no apologies, just a weary yawn. Samantha tried to read his expression, searching for any sign of guilt or regret, but his face was as inscrutable as polished stone. She found it chilling that he could be so calm. The next morning, a series of texts from James appeared on her phone. Each text carried an electric jolt of fear and inevitability. "I have something," one read. "Need more time to confirm," stated another. Samantha could barely breathe, let alone eat or focus on her prenatal care. All she could do was wait for the day James would present her with the evidence that would shatter her marriage. Within a week, James Carter gathered enough intel to shake Samantha's already fragile world. The private investigator requested a meeting at a discreet cafe in West Hollywood. Samantha, anxious to avoid any run-ins with people who knew them, wore sunglasses and a simple navy blue dress that concealed her growing baby bump. When she slipped into a corner booth, James was waiting, his face somber. "I'm sorry to have to do this," he began, placing a thick folder on the table. "But it looks like your suspicions were correct." Samantha could hardly speak as she opened the folder. Inside were photos of Andrew in restaurants, at a luxury condominium complex, and most heartbreakingly, kissing a woman with long chestnut brown hair. The woman appeared younger than Samantha by a few years. She was tall and elegant, with an immaculate sense of style. Her name, James revealed, was Victoria McNeil. She was a marketing executive for one of Andrew's subsidiaries, a budding influencer often photographed at swanky events. Samantha could only stare, tears threatening to spill. Where were these taken?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James pointed at the pictures. "That's a lounge in Beverly Hills. And this one here is the driveway of a condo in Century City. From my observations, Andrews visited her place 4 times this week, always after midnight. He stays for a few hours and then leaves around dawn." Samantha's stomach churned. Her eyes lingered on a particular image of Andrew holding Victoria's hand as they walked into what looked like a chic rooftop bar. He was smiling in a way Samantha hadn't seen in a long time, relaxed, even joyful. The pain was immediate and visceral. "I can get more details if you want," James offered gently. "But from a professional standpoint, you have more than enough evidence." "I'm sorry." Her throat felt parched. "No, thank you. This is enough." Driving home, Samantha wrestled with conflicting emotions, betrayal, heartbreak, anger, and a strange, numb acceptance that all of this was, in fact, real. It was as though she had stepped outside of her own life and was peering in from a distance, powerless to change what she saw. That evening, Andrew returned from another business meeting. Samantha confronted him in the living room, the photos scattered across the marble coffee table. He froze in the doorway, color draining from his face. Time seemed to stand still in that moment. Lily's laughter echoed from the upstairs nursery, a gentle reminder of the life that was about to be torn apart by the reality of these images. "How long?" Samantha asked, her eyes brimming with tears. She could barely keep her voice steady. Andrew's gaze darted around, seeking a lie, an escape, some rationalization. Finally, he released a tremulous sigh. "A few months," he admitted. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Samantha's voice cracked. "A few months? How long have you been lying to me? Sneaking out at night? Does she know I'm pregnant?" Andrew ran a hand through his hair, unable to meet Samantha's eyes. "She knows," he mumbled. "It's complicated, Sam. I was under so much stress. I never wanted to hurt you. Never wanted to hurt me," Samantha said, her tone sharper than she'd ever heard it. "You lied to me for months. You've been with another woman while I'm here carrying your child, Andrew." She expected Andrew to fall to his knees, to plead for her forgiveness, to swear this was a mistake. Instead, he offered a series of half-hearted excuses: stress, midlife crisis, a search for excitement he felt he had lost in their relationship. Each word was like salt in a gaping wound. Samantha's breaths grew ragged. She placed a hand on her belly as though to shield her unborn child from the ugliness unfolding. "Get out," she whispered. Andrew looked stunned, as though he hadn't anticipated her anger. "Samantha, let's talk about this. Let's figure it out," she laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. "Talk about what? You sneaking out in the middle of the night to be with her? This entire pregnancy I've been suffering alone while you've been having the time of your life, from the looks of it. Go to her if that's where you want to be. I'm done." And so Andrew left, though he didn't go far, only out to the guest house in the estate's expansive grounds. His pride wouldn't allow him to leave the property he believed was rightfully his. But for Samantha, that night was the beginning of the end. The illusions were gone, and there was no more pretending that Andrew might simply be overworked. The mistress had a name, Victoria McNeil, and a face. Her husband had a secret life. Samantha spent the next few days in a haze. Andrew was still on the property, albeit confined to the guest house, and Lily was the only reason Samantha maintained any semblance of composure. Their daughter was too young to understand why Daddy was suddenly sleeping somewhere else, but she sensed the tension. She asked questions with all the innocent curiosity of a child. "Did Daddy do something bad? Why don't you eat breakfast together anymore?" Samantha's heart shattered each time she had to force a smile and divert Lily's questions with, "We're just giving Daddy some space, sweetheart." In the daytime, Samantha busied herself with prenatal checkups, meeting Elena for lunch, and sorting through some philanthropic obligations she had committed to months before. At night, she cried silently in her room, replaying the last few months of her life like a broken record. She longed for the days when Andrew would sweep her into his arms after returning from a business trip and regale her with exciting stories of corporate deals he'd sealed in Hong Kong or Tokyo. She missed the moments of spontaneous affection, the weekend getaways to Napa Valley, the quiet evenings they used to spend watching old black-and-white movies. Now, every time she saw him pass through the corridors of the main house to greet Lily, or make a phone call in the study, her chest tightened. Andrew seemed reluctant to pack his things and leave entirely, as if staying in the guest house preserved some modicum of control over his marriage and family. Samantha began to realize that Andrew was no longer the man she married. He was protective of his reputation above all else. She suspected that to him, admitting to family and friends that his marriage was